Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, y'all. We're gonna get started with our webinar for tonight. I hope folks can see the screen. Brittany, can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So my name is Wisdom Cole. I'm the National Organizing Manager for the Youth and College Division. And today what we'll be doing, so thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is part of our webinar series about our voter turnout campaign, Level Up NAACP 2018. And tonight what we're going to be talking about is how to kickstart a voter turnout campaign. So on tonight's agenda, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to have greetings from our Region 7 National Youth Work Committee members. Then we are going to talk a little bit about voter registration and how to put on a voter registration drive. But after that, we're going to talk about how to build your base, right? So it's really important to talk about how do we get the volunteers, the people who are necessary to make sure that we're able to put on a proper voter registration drive. Then after that, we should be able to get an example from the field in terms of what's actually been happening in Region 7. And then we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. Again, for any updates, any news, definitely follow us on our Instagram page at NAACP_YC. All right, we're going to get started. So I'd like to invite Jacqueline Grant, our NAACP National Board Member from Region 7, to give a greetings.
Okay, guys. Hi, everyone. As Wisdom just said, my name is Jacqueline Grant. I do represent Region 7, so thank you so much for allowing me to serve. So just a couple of things when we're going through this. I just want you guys to be completely open and honest about, experiences or anything like that. I'm definitely excited to work with you guys. I'm excited to, make sure that we are participating in midterm elections for sure, that we level up and that we are out. And I'm also super excited for us to look forward to the 2020 elections as well. So I know that we're gearing up. We have all this enthusiasm, but we also need to make sure that we have the proper protocol and education and knowledge behind it. So I'm super excited for this webinar. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I appreciate it. Next, I'm going to have Brittany Calloway, our NAACP adult rep for Region 7.
Yep, thank you guys also for having me. It's now too a good time, Wisdom, for me to also just kind of give a highlight overview of just some of the programs that we're also going to do to also help with voter registration. Can I do that now too?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, perfect. So thank you guys again, though, for having me to serve on the panel as well, and just as well as being your Region 7 adult rep. So just wanted to really just quickly also kind of give you guys kind of a overview of what we also are planning in DC and just some of the things that we're doing to, work up with voter registration and the turnout as well. Just so you guys can jot down, just some of these little quick tidbits that we've been putting together. Our actual political action chair did go to the national training that took place this past weekend in Cincinnati. And so I was able to, kind of also hash out the plan with him and his other co-chair to really see what we are focusing on for our campaign and what we're looking to do. So just want to give you some tidbits of what you may all have as ideas for you as well. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking a really deep campaign to partner with a lot of the historically Black sororities and fraternities. We have quite a bit in the DC area, and working with them to do voter registration drives. Another thing that we're doing on a high level is working with all the college chapters. So Jacqueline is the former president for Howard University, so obviously one of the bigger chapters in DC, but working with her new leadership and the remaining 5, soon to be 6 college chapters in the DC region to do a full day that's dedicated to voter registration and signing people up. So it's kind of going to be a collaborative effort amongst the college chapters. So being able to do that in your region, Maryland and Virginia, I'm happy to, help with that coordination and organization for what that looks like. but we're going to be doing it at our actual executive committee leadership training to, just kind of mobilize, strategize, when that's with the new leadership that comes in. And so that way we can, pick the full dates that we're going to be doing the drives. And, all college chapters in DC will be doing at the same time. So it really builds that awareness and builds that hype to get people out there registered to vote. Another thing that we're doing as well, we have a lot of educators in our branch, which is, phenomenal. And so we are really focusing on a teacher campaign to really work on registering high school seniors who will then be eligible to vote once they, essentially graduate, and trying to bring them to the polls, or some who are already 18 already in their senior class. And so one of the things too, I think to be mindful of, DC is a very, politically liberal state to begin with, or it's friendly to begin with. So one of the things that I know that we are also looking to do is seeing how we can mobilize our people in our branch, people in our communities to really help in some of the states that have real severe voter suppression and have, some swing states. So, we talked a lot about just some of the different ways of us being able to bus members from DC to Ohio, North Carolina, because they're closer, who are essentially in those swing states, to really be on the ground, helping and partnering with the different branches to really help really shape and impact the vote in those states, since DC, has been pretty traditional in how we voted for the past few years now. But yeah, so always looking for suggestions, always looking for ways to partner. And if there's something that I or our branch can do to also help and support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate that update and the work that y'all are doing here in Region 7. We definitely want to get folks connected on the ground. We want to make sure that folks in Washington, D.C., in Maryland, in Virginia are in the know of what's going on and how they can get connected. And so after this email, definitely feel free, or after this webinar, feel free to email us at youthandcollege at naacpnet.org. If you could excuse me for 1 second, I'm going to switch our presenter real quick. All right, so just a reminder of our goals for 2018. One is to increase the voter registration for 18 to 25-year-olds in terms of who is turning out to vote, right? So we want to look at how are students of color, people of color who are non-typical voters turning out to vote. So as members of the Youth and College Division, we want to really focus on how do we get those people to turn out, right? And so as you're thinking on your campus, thinking about what are locations, what are places where you can reach these folks and bring them into our voter registration drives, which we'll talk about in a minute. After that, we're going to talk about building your base, right? How do we shift our relationships of power to make sure that we have a strong base, right? Oftentimes we say membership is power. So we want to make sure we're able to build that base when we are doing these voter registration drives. Later on in our webinar series this fall, we're going to talk about how to educate and make sure you turn out all people of color to the polls. Real quick, if you have any questions, if you are on the web application for GoToWebinar, you can put questions in the question box at the bottom. When we get to the end of our webinar series or the webinar tonight, we'll actually address those questions. So feel free anytime if you have a question, drop a question right there, and at the end we will address them. So voter registration tools. So when you're thinking about methods to register voters, number one, you want to think about what are high traffic canvas areas, right? So high traffic canvas areas means areas where there's a high frequency for conversations for passerbys, right? You want to think about on your campus, is there a quad area? Is there an area where students frequently go to visit, right? Think about if you are at a large campus, are there classrooms where you can go and speak to classes about coming out to do voter registration, to come out to register to vote, right? It's fall, right? It's the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the semester. A lot of students are starting college for the very first time. They're moving into their dorms, and this is a perfect opportunity to connect with young people, young voters, young people who may possibly not be registered to vote already, but it's a great opportunity to get them connected to vote. Our second strategy is thinking about door to door, right? So we call this our door knocking strategy. If there's a way where you are in a neighborhood or on your campus, you can go door to door and ask people to register to vote, but also get them to pledge to vote, right? And so knowing where your community is at, knowing where students are at, knowing where students tend to frequent, how can you go door to door and get folks to register to vote? And then last but not least, you want to think about campus outreach. Are there other organizations, right, progressive groups, churches, other schools and units on your campus that you can connect with to make sure they are getting their members to register to vote, right? If there are groups that have similar purposes or similar students who tend to frequent those spaces, how can you connect with those to build voter coalition that are getting the most amount of students to come out and turn out to vote, right? Later on, we'll be talking about how to actually do those things, how to do class raps, how to do bookmarking, how to actually form a voter coalition. There'll be handouts for y'all to access on our website so that you can use that at your leisure, at your resource. So sometimes you might be thinking, okay, what does it take to put on a voter registration drive? What are things that we need to actually get a voter registration up and moving? So one, you want to make sure you have a place, date, and time for your voter registration event. So you want to make sure that if there are channels that you have to work through your university to set up a place, to set up a date, to set up a time, that you're working through those channels ahead of time, right? Usually I say, think about it 21 days in advance, right? I know schools, for some people, right, school's already started. For some people, school is not starting until September. And so if school's already starting, right, you want to get started now. You want to design a backwards calendar where you can begin to plot out what are the things you need to do to make sure that your voter registration drive is successful, right? So if your voter registration drive is the end of the first week of September, right, that's about 2 weeks out. You want to set that as your date and think about, okay, what are the certain approval that we need to get? Do we need to get a table? Second, we'll talk about how to get voter registration forms, who is the leadership in terms of this voter registration drive, who's our target demographic, do we have a script to talk to new voters or potential voters, how do we identify people who potentially may not be registered to vote, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in future webinars to come. So like I said, connect with event organizers for permission. If there is a concert that's happening on campus, if there is, welcome week activities, talking to the leadership of those events to say, hey, we are doing voter registration. We're interested in getting students engaged in the civic engagement process. Can we table at your event? Can we make sure that we're able to speak to your students and allow them to get involved with the NAACP as well as register to vote, right? And most people are going to say, yeah, most people are going to say, this is a great opportunity. This is a great way to collaborate. This is a great way to understand, especially for new incoming students, what are ways to get connected on campus. And but you want to make sure you get that permission ahead of time. You want to build your team, right? So thinking about who are the point people, who are people who are coordinating this event, and who are the folks who are going to get the voter registration forms, who's going to set up the table, who's going to be doing the ask of the students, making sure who are the key people in leadership. Number 4, you want to get voter registration forms. So I've been getting a lot of emails about, hey, Wisdom, where do I get voter registration forms, right? So when you're thinking about getting voter registration forms, usually you want to be able to you can look online, right? It's simple as Googling voter registration forms for DC, voter registration forms for Maryland, voter registration forms for Virginia, right? And there's certain universal forms, but you can also go to your local Board of Elections and county office, as well as the library, the DMV, and the U.S. Post Office to get voter registration forms. So that's a really easy way to connect with that and make sure you have forms ready for your event. After that, you want to get supplies. You want to think about, do I have clipboards? Do I have pens? Do I have t-shirts? Do I have stickers? Things that make your event. If you see there, you see NAACP Binghamton University, right? They got candy on their table. They have water, things like that make the table alluring for people to come to, for people to join, for people to be active. Like we said on our last webinar, for us to give you a vote box, we want you to have 500 registered voters, right? So for your campus, if you can get 500 registered voters, and I'll talk about this again, right? It's as simple as having 10 volunteers who are literally doing voter registration work for an hour a day, right? So if you do voter registration work for about an hour, you should be able to get 5 to 7 voters registered in that hour. If you're doing that Monday through Friday just for an hour each day, all right, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, that's 25 voters, right? And then you have 10 people doing that, that's 250. After 2 weeks, that's 500 voters, right? And so if you have a strong team of 10 people who can get 5 people voted each day, registered to vote each day, you'll have 500, and then we will send you a vote box. Next, you want to publicize your event, right? You want to make sure that you're posting on Instagram, that you're flying around your campus, that if you have a Facebook or a Twitter page, that you're giving people ample time to know when your event is, right? And this really takes strategic planning and making sure that you have strong leadership who can create dynamic posters and flyers, right? A recommendation that I have is that if you've ever done any kind of web design or any kind of graphic design, there's really great websites and resources. Canva.com is a really great resource for folks to use to design different types of posters and flyers. So definitely get connected with that. After that, you want to train your volunteers, which we'll talk about in a minute, in terms of what does it take to have a strong volunteer and how do you build relationship with those volunteers. And then after that, you want to register people and make sure that they pledge to vote, right? You want to reg and pledge. So when you're registering people, right, you have your registration card, but then you also have a pledge card saying that you're going to pledge to vote. And the importance of a pledge card is that it allows you to database, right? So we want to start thinking about how we're databasing the people who are pledging to vote and how are we reminding them about key dates that are coming up, right? September 25th is National Voter Registration Day. If we want more volunteers and more people to turn out, we want to make sure that we have people who are able to turn out for Voter Registration Day. So making sure that you're getting people to pledge to vote and contacting them throughout the process so they know where their polling place is, so they know what dates are important, when they know if there are upcoming debates to listen to, if there's events that are happening. And again, this is also a good way to increase your membership, right? At the beginning of the year, we want to think about how we increase membership for our units, and this is also a great way to do that. So a kind of key script that I use, or key script that is used nationally, is when you're talking to people, right, you're asking them, are you registered to vote? If they say no, register them. If they say yes, but they don't have their current address, right, they're like, oh, I moved, if they're a new student, they said I'm registered to vote back home, but I'm not registered to vote here, and they're interested in voting in DC, in Maryland, in Virginia, you want to make sure that they are registered at the current address. So you want to re-register them. If they say yes, but they don't have any confirmation, re-register them, right? But if they say yes, I'm registered to vote here at this address, get them to pledge to vote. So you can keep them updated on key events, key dates, key things that you want your educated voters to know to execute a properly executed voter registration campaign. All right. So if you have any questions about registering people to vote, where you can get forms, definitely feel free to email us, contact us. If you have questions, please drop your questions below. But you can register. You can get resources from us at the Youth and College Division. So other registration tools, right? Like I talked about, tabling, making sure that you're tabling in the quad or areas where people are frequently coming to do voter registration work. Next, you want to do things like class reps, right? Are there places or teachers who support your movement or support the work that you do that you can speak to, that you can talk to and get connected with to make announcements in their classrooms, right? If you're doing, a 2-month voter registration campaign, you should be setting dates early in advance, thinking about, okay, how can I hit these classrooms strategically throughout the next 2 months to give them up-to-date information, right? Where you know that people are responsive or people can either sign their name on a clipboard to get more information so they can be databased as well. Thinking about door knocking, how can you go door to door? How can you do, I know back when I was on campus, we used to call it dorm storming. How can you go to each dorm and talk to new freshmen or new transfer students about our voter registration drive and get them to pledge to vote? Another key thing that is also going to help you work is building coalitions with other campus organizations. And I really want to stress this idea of building coalitions. When you build coalitions with other people, right, you are able to get a lot more done because you have more people, right? They say many hands make light work, right? So when you have multiple people who are able to support you in your work and other organizations that maybe appeal to other demographics on your campus, you can get more people registered to vote and get more people to pledge to vote because you have more people in your coalition, right? And we can talk a little bit later about how to build successful coalitions, how to delegate responsibilities. The next thing I would say is phone banking, right? So how can we call people in our network? How can we call people who are on our campus? How can we call people who maybe aren't constantly coming to campus, but are coming to campus for classes, but you don't see them in the quad, right? How can we phone bank them and make sure that they are also turning out to vote, right? So this is the key thing in databases. Like, as you database, right, maybe after the first contact, right, you have a student come to campus, they register to vote with you, then you tell them about a debate that's coming up that you're hosting and you want them to attend that, but maybe you haven't seen them in a couple of weeks. Because you database them, you can call them up and say, hey, Reggie, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well today. I just want to let you know that we're having an event on campus to talk about the electoral debates that are going on, and we're going to watch together and have a discussion with the NAACP. And that's a really good way to make sure you're consistently having people who are engaged and connected to the work that you're doing. Emails and text messages, right? So when you're getting people to pledge a vote, you're making sure you have their name, their email, their phone number, so you can contact them in multiple ways, right? You can text them, you can email them, you can make sure they're connected to your social media so they're getting up-to-date information. I really like that, the social media campaigns, because with social media, you're constantly seeing it and it's constantly engaging you in different aspects, right? Also make it fun, right? Is there ways where you can make a video for people to turn out to vote, right? I saw a cool video in Atlanta where they were getting people, they were saying, Kiki, are you voting? Are you registered to vote, right? Things like that. Leaflets and brochures, right? Again, if you have people who are really good at design, people who are really good at compacting information, is there brochures or handouts that you can give people to turn out for your events? Potential voting registration events. So some campuses have Souls to the Polls, where they're making sure they're tying it to the history of voting for African American people in this country, and how do people turn out to vote in sorry about that, for people to turn out to vote. The next thing is things like football games. If there are debate watches, are there ways you can recruit people online using your social media presence? Is there campus town halls where you can make announcements, or you can hold right? Or the town halls where we're talking about the state of your campus and the importance of voting, right? Again, the key in a voter registration turnout campaign is turning out people to vote, right? Then is there mock debates where you can have people talk about the issues that are coming up in the upcoming election and actually have folks debate about that, right? Those are really cool to do. And last but not least, a classic party, right? If you think about historically, right, multiple organizations would hold parties and they would stop the party and be like, hey, make sure you turn out to vote on this day at this time, because it's important for us to be able to continue to do this work, right? We want to offer a space where you can have fun, but you want to make sure that you are also turning out for the events that were happening on campus that are political, that are necessary for the future of our organization. So like I said before, right, on average, it takes 1 hour to collect 5 to 7 voter registration cards. If you have one organizer who's giving 5 hours a week, right, Monday through Friday, every 1 hour each day, you should be able to get about 5 to 7 voter registration cards or pledges to vote. And with that, right, by the end of the week, if you have 10 organizers, you should have 250. By the end of 2 weeks, you'll have 500. And by the end of 3 weeks, you'll have 750, right? So really, really think about when you're starting this voter registration turnout campaign, who are your strong leaders who are going to support you in getting your initial 250, right? And how can you use those 10 people to increase the amount of volunteers that you have, right? Which kind of leads us into our next topic of building your base. So when you're thinking about building your base, building your base is the act of recruiting, identifying, cultivating, and developing a mass of leaders who feel and identify with the ownership within your organization, right? So who are people who've been rocking with you since day one, who've been rocking with you since the jump, people that are strong leaders who can connect with other people really easily, who can talk to people in the field and actually get to know them, right? And we're going to talk about in a second how to really build one-on-one relationships with people to build your base. but thinking about, who's going to be your core 10, right? And I want to challenge everyone to think of 10 people. What are 10 people that you can connect with that will allow you to actually do the work that you want to do in this voter turnout campaign? So the elements of base building is recruiting and identifying, right? Identifying who are your community leaders, who are people who will connect with students easily, right? And what you want to do is you want to begin to build a relationship with those people. So you want to start leveraging one-on-one meetings with people to deepen personal connections and mutual accountability, right? So that's sitting down with them early on to say, hey, like, I know you're a person in the community who people listen to. I know you're a person who exemplifies strong leadership skills, and talking to them about what their interests are, right? If their interests are in multimedia, if their interests are in one-on-one connections, if their interests are in putting on events, right? How do I connect them into my voter turnout campaign and make sure that they are doing the things that they want to do that's going to allow us to get the best results for our campaign? After you recruit people and build those relationships, you want to make sure that people are politically educated. Like, what is our basis? Like, what is the basis of who we are and why we do the work that we do, right? Take them through the history of the NAACP, right? How long we've been doing this work, why we do this work, why this work is important, what are key pillars to define who we are as a people, right? Then you want to make sure that people are engaged and empowered, right? So this is a perfect way to show young leaders and new leaders who they can be as leaders in the NAACP when they see actual wins within this organization through a voter turnout campaign, right? Wow, right? You really put on that event really well. Wow, we got 50 people to register to vote in one day. Wow, we got a lot of folks to show out to our Party to the Polls event, right? There's different ideas and different ways so you can uplift people who may have leadership skills that aren't being seen all the time. I'm going to take a pause real quick and see if folks want to drop any questions real quick about anything in terms of the elements of base building or voter registration. All right, I'll keep going. So when you're thinking about base building, right, you want to think about where is the staff-driven groundwork and where are the volunteer staff actions, right? So how does staff get new signups or people they can identify who can do the work in the field? How do you have one-on-ones and identify your leaders in your organization? How do you set up uh, volunteer meetings so people know what they're doing, right? We're going to talk about a little bit about how do you make sure that the different work that you're doing is bite-sized and chewable so people can actually engage in this work in the way they want to engage. And then from there, you want to think about, okay, from volunteers, how do they create shared strategies or best practices, right? So what are the best practices of our NAACP unit to turn out voters? Where are the high density areas where we know there are people who are not registered to vote that we can go to, right? Is there this event on campus that we know that we can participate in, or set up a table and advertise for the NAACP, or advertise for folks to register to vote that we know that people are going to be at? Make sure you set goals, make sure they meet regularly, and that they are building, right? And then last but not least, you want to make sure that they're holding actions, they're building energy, and they are recruiting more leaders, right? Again, we say membership is power. Membership is power. The more people that we are able to recruit, the more hands that we're able to have to support the work that we are doing. So recruiting and training volunteers. So when you're thinking about recruiting and training volunteers, you want to think about the contributions, right? So what do people have to offer, right? What is work that they can do or support, or what is in their hands? Like what are ways that they are connected to your organization, and how can they offer, right? Maybe they're in your student government and they can support the work that you're doing by contacting student government. Maybe they are in a Black Greek organization, or maybe they're in a regular Greek organization, right? How can they connect with people that they already know to expand the work that we are doing in our voter turnout campaign? What are their interests, right? Are there stakes a person has an issue by virtue or the relationship to the issue, right? Thinking about just the core thing of like, it's very important for people of color to turn out to vote because the people who are going to be in office determine the laws that are going to be put in place for us, right? What are those key issues, right? And the key issues could be different for your state, but thinking about their freedom or their interests tie in with the interests of our voter turnout campaign, right? So making sure that you're able to do your own research and understanding what's going on in your state and making sure that you can connect that to the people you are getting to come and volunteer. Then you want to think about the capacity, right? Folks are students. Folks have classes. Folks are trying to get internships, right? Folks are trying to build leadership experience, right? So talking to people about how is this a way for folks to build leadership experience within your organization and actually communicate that on their resume, or maybe, and not just seeing it as a resume builder, but seeing it as an opportunity to be a part of the NAACP in a greater way than they are maybe than just as members. Next, you want to think about the issues, right? What are the issues that people care about? What are issues that folks will turn out for or show up for, right? Folks are students, right? Folks are thinking about their classes. They're thinking about how can I get a job after I graduate? They're thinking about how do I make sure I do well in my classes? How do I make sure that the things that are happening outside of university, how does that intertwine with what is happening inside of university, right? So being attuned to the key issues and how the issues connect to people that you want to connect with your campaign. And finally, you want to start thinking about their heart, right? Their values, right? Are there core beliefs or motivations that people act on, right? What are something that's going to get people to act on? I know when I think about myself and I think about other folks that I've talked to, actually this weekend I was in Cincinnati with a bunch of trainers from all over the country. And I had a student talk to me about when Michael Brown was murdered, right? And how that became something that motivated him to act and to do the work that he does today, right? And so thinking about in your state, what are things or values that push people to act and to actually do the work that we are asking them to do. So training and tracking volunteers. When training and tracking volunteers, you want to build on things that people are already good at, right? So again, if people are good at web design and multimedia, running things online, you want to connect them there. People are good at groundwork, making sure they're on the ground. People are good at communicating, and you're having events where people need to give speeches or announcements. You're having those people at the forefront of that, right? One of the worst things you can do is put people whose interests don't align with the job that you're giving them. I know sometimes we want to push people, right? And we want to elevate them, and we do want to challenge them. But the best way to start is connecting people to interests that they have already, and making sure that the task that you're giving them is bite-sized, is biteable, right? It's something that is measurable that they can do, right? You can say, hey, on the first week, if you are a person that you are asking to be on the ground talking to students one-on-one, you're saying your goal by Friday is to get 25 people registered to vote. At minimum, I'm asking you just to put an hour each day, but if you want to go above and beyond, please do that, right? That's really important. That's really helpful. That's really supportive, and that allows us to do the work that we're doing on a whole another level, right? So you can push people to do work, but also make sure things are measurable, something that they can do, something that works with their schedule, again, and builds on what they're good at. Again, right, include specific timelines, expectations, accountability. Who are they reporting to? When I get these 25 people registered to vote, who do I turn my pledge cards into, right? You want to make the process as easy as possible so that folks can be able to do that work with expertise and not feeling like they are confused about what they're trying to achieve. Finally, as an individual, you want to allow people to prove that they can handle the responsibilities, right? So I say this all the time. You want to have a low floor, high ceiling, making sure that people can enter this work at any level, right? But be able to go anywhere in this work. So thinking that like, okay, the task that you're giving them, the first task you're giving them, is something that they can really achieve. They can be like, yo, I got 25 people registered to vote. Yo, I got 50 people to join the NAACP at the end of 2 weeks. Oh, I got 5 more people to come and volunteer and support our campaign. I updated our NAACP Instagram. Oh, I connected with these different organizations, and they're all down to do voter registration with us. Something that they can do, they can achieve, and begin to push their responsibility level, where they start to have ownership and feel like they are a part of this movement in a deeper way. So after this webinar, I'll send out this tracking device, and so this is an example of a way to track how people are doing voter registration, to track the number of volunteers you have, who are you building with in your coalition, when are you tabling, what are the number of hours you were tabling in, when are you giving class reps, who are you giving class reps to, are you doing registration cards, are you getting volunteers from class reps, when are you door knocking, how many people did you knock on doors? How many people said yes? How many people said no? How many registration cards did you get? How many pledge cards you have, right? You want to be able to track this in a way that is measurable, that you can check in at the end of the day or check in at the end of the week and make sure that people got their tasks done, right? Again, you're making sure people have the ability to do their job and track their job in an efficient way. So some best practices around building your base is you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to mentor and train volunteers. So if you have people who are experienced doing voter turnout work, make sure those are your key leaders and that they are mentoring and training volunteers. That they're checking with them, hey, like once a week, we're having a check-in. How are we doing? How are we feeling? Are we feeling defeated because maybe we didn't get enough people to register? Are we feeling excited because we hit our goal or we went above our goal? Are we excited for an event? What are some things that we need to think about as our events are coming up, that you're having those check-ins weekly, consistently? Is there a group text, right? Is there a group text where you can update about things that are happening up to date in the minute? You want to build community with your volunteers. So as soon as you have your group of volunteers, you want to get to know them on a deeper level, right? Oftentimes organizations will do a retreat where folks will build community with one another and really actually begin to build trust with one another. So they feel like they can actually talk to one another, that they communicate to one another, and they don't feel like they're isolated from the rest of the volunteers, where they know they can ask people for help, they can ask people for support, right? You want to make sure that you have that sense of solidarity with people in your volunteer committee. You want to make sure that you have a firm ask and a firm commitment. What are you asking your volunteers to do? I'm asking this volunteer to make sure that they post something every single day on their Instagram. I'm asking this volunteer to go out to the quarry, to the quad for 1 hour every day and table and table and table. I'm asking this volunteer to do class wraps in this classroom, this classroom, this classroom for these 2 weeks, right? What is your ask? And make sure that they are able to commit to it, right? Make sure it works with their schedule, right? That goes on with having clear expectations. Make time for your volunteers, right? As leaders, you want to make sure that you are making time to check in with them. Again, that they feel comfortable to ask you when they don't know what to do, that they are able to communicate to you when they are in distress, but to also communicate to you when they have those victories. You also want to make sure that you share the decision-making power. So as you are developing your voter turnout campaign or you're developing your voter registration drive, are there ways that our volunteers can add their own unique twist to this voter registration drive that we are doing, use their connections, use their know-how, use their prior experience to make it even better? And last but not least, you want to make sure you're thanking your volunteers, you're giving them praise and celebrating them, right? So maybe if you have a group text every week, you're thanking like, hey, this person got the most amount of people registered to vote, and we want to praise them. Oh, hey, thank y'all for showing out today and putting on an awesome event. I know that you were out there in the quad for 2-3 hours getting people registered to vote. Thank you for putting on this event at the bookstore where you were getting people to register to vote after they purchased these books. If there was a resource fair that people went to and they supported y'all in making sure they were getting people registered to vote or pledged to vote, you're thanking them, you're praising them, and celebrating them. All right. So next, I would like to invite Monte Taylor, our Virginia State president, to talk a little bit about some of the work that is happening on the ground at Old Dominion University. Real quick, while we wait for him, if there are any questions you've had so far about our presentation, feel free to drop a question.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I didn't know if I should come in or not.
Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that the presentation talked about that was really key for me. So I didn't go over this during my welcome, so my apologies for that. But before I was the Region 7 NAACP Youth and College, whatever titles, right? Before that, I was the Howard University NAACP president for two terms. And one of the things that we did consistently, and one of my key things was making sure when we're talking about reach, we're talking about our ability to reach, was making sure that my council always had something else connected to them. So in that regard, it was, all right, well, if I'm going to have if I'm going to have someone that's going to be my vice president was Deja Bryan, who is now the president there, who's amazing. She was in chapel, so I knew that every time we had something, that chapel was going to be able to blast it out because they had somebody that represented them there. In the same instance, I had another gentleman. He just turned Greek, but he was he was into Greek organizations as well, and so we were able to connect with them via the way I positioned my counsel. And so I think that is very imperative when you're looking into not just, is that person, like, what's that person's ability? And I know that that's very important, but it's also who can they get connected with? Are they part of your SGA, right? Like, so when you're trying to push through legislation through SGA for you to get funds for your university campus, and you want to, you need help with the voter campaign, you don't want to be able to, you don't want to seem like an outsider coming in. If you already have someone on or in your ranks that's already there that can say, hey, that's one of my peoples, let me talk to them right quick and see if we can get this voter campaign pushed, to be able to do that. I think that's key. The second thing I wanted to also talk about was, timing in place. So again, I speak from my experiences at Howard. One of the things that we did was we made sure that we had voter registration drives every time they served, what was it, Soul Food? Was it Soul Food Wednesday? It was like Wednesday, Soul Food Wednesday. We knew that that was going to be where the people were. And so we were out there, and we weren't just standing behind the tables. We walked up to them. We knew the line was going to be wrapped around the corner, so nobody had a place to go. You couldn't kind of hide from us, but there'd be some people that put their headphones in, like, we don't want to talk to you guys. But we made it Soul Food Thursday. It was Soul Food Thursday. But we made sure that we tapped them anyway, because a second of embarrassment or a second of that awkward conversation, it can change people's attitudes about it, attitudes about voting, if you really care for them enough to reach out to them. And then the other thing we did was when the last election, one of the just basic things we did was like, hey, you know what? We're meeting up at this certain location to go vote. Our polling location, was across the street. And so we were just like, hey guys, look, we're at the flagpole. A group of us are going down to go vote. And so that takes off the having the feeling of voting is an individual duty, which it is, but bringing along your 3, 4, 5 friends is paramount to making sure that it isn't just always them feeling that they have to do this by themselves. Yes, voting is by yourself when you're behind and you're behind the poll and you're figuring out who you want to represent you. But while you're going there, you can raise awareness just by walking there. Like, oh, okay, I have like a big group of people. Where are they going? Oh, they're going to the polls. So they're going to go vote, and make it an everyday conversation type thing. You guys are talking about the newest artists, Cardi B, the Carters, right? Like, oh yeah, and about voting. We just had history being made in Florida right now. And so like use that as a talking point when you're talking about kick starting your campaigns. So that was like a couple of things that I just wanted to make sure that you guys had. If you had any questions about that, let me know while we're waiting on Monte. But I just wanted to like jump in and tell you guys that because I didn't tell you guys that at the beginning. So I'm sorry about that. But yes.
Right. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Monte should be on right now. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
All right, I got Brother Monte on here on speakerphone. He's going to speak a little bit about what's been happening on his campus.
All right, cool. Can y'all hear me? Great. All right, sorry guys, my phone has been acting a little crazy. But yes, like you said, so I used to be the president for Old Dominion, but now since I'm the state president, I really got alone. But I'm a senior at ODU, so I'm still very active with our campus. One of the things that we always make sure we're doing as we get closer to election time is constant tabling. We'll be doing tabling all the way up until registration is over as far as being eligible to vote. We're also going to be having a voting literacy event, pretty much talking about, where does your vote go? Who, the person that you're voting for, where would that put your power at for, say, for instance, if you're voting for this person, and they are very savvy with insurance or like health insurance and healthcare. That kind of stuff, that's very important so that people know who they're voting for beyond what is told on the ad. Another thing that we're going to be working on is we're having a cookout. This event that we're calling Who's Invited to the Cookout. And there's a partnership. He was talking about having coalitions with local organizations. We're building a coalition with a local organization that is they work with rappers, but they're also talking about environmental and climate justice, which is something that the NAACP is taking up as well. And so we are working together to do a voter registration drive at our cookout that we're planning for this year. We're also looking to do anything else that we can do. That'd be a great idea. And I was sitting here taking notes on the call as well. And so if you guys want to get my email from Wisdom, and you can contact me and give me any ideas or anything you would like to collaborate on, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Brother Monte. I appreciate it a lot, right? And I think what's really important about this is that thinking about a certain date that's coming up is we have National Voter Registration Day, which is coming up Tuesday, September 25th. And what I'm doing is with Brother Monte, as well as some other folks in Virginia, is working to collaborate around how we can do national events around key dates. So how can you partner with other campuses in your state? How can you partner with other local organizations, if there are organizations or other student groups on your campus who are doing dope events that you can connect with, how can you build with them so you make the work easier for you, that you make the work more dynamic, right? This weekend when we were talking with folks, people were talking about different events that they were having on their campus to get people to turn out to vote, right? People were having different parties. People were having different viewing parties where they're watching movies about political history or movies that are just fun and that get people to come out and also get people to register to vote, right? So you want to really think dynamically about how you're getting people to turn out for your events. And so I'm going to leave a moment for question and answer. Just real quick, about an hour after this webinar, you'll get an email with a survey just for some data, so we can get some data about our webinars and how we can better it for the future. But if you have questions in terms of that thing you can answer in this webinar, definitely feel free to drop questions in that survey. And feel free to email us at youthcollege@naacpnet.org. My email will also come through in that survey as well, and so feel free to reach out to me as well personally. Again, I will also send out this presentation to everybody after this call because it's really important that you also have this so you can work with people on your campus. I know a lot of people here are campus leaders or people who are actually doing a lot of the work on the forefront. And so I want you all to be able to educate other people and train other people, right? It's important that you disseminate this information to other folks. So real quick, I'm going to take a look at the questions. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions so far. Someone asked a question about voter registration forms real quick. You can definitely Google that online, but I definitely want to encourage y'all to check out what is happening on the local level, right? So like I said before, you can check out your local library. You can go to the DMV. You can go to the U.S. Post Office, and you can get forms from there, right? If you're trying to get a mass order of forms, I believe that you can order them from your local Board of Elections or county office, and they will send you some, but you want to get that in sooner than later so you make sure that people can have time to collect that, and so you can set it up for your voter registration event, right? Again, like I said, you want to start thinking 14 to 21 days out from your event so you can plan strategically. All right, look at this other question. Any ideas or strategies to get people's attention when tabling and not be ignored? That is a great question. So when you're thinking about tabling, a really great way to get people's attention is to think about how can you use possibly like chants, right? So think about, I want you all to think about how can you use this voter registration drive to also use as a way to recruit people to the NAACP, right? So if there are events you're having, right? If there's food, if there are giveaways, right? If there's things that you can use to, spark people's interest, definitely do that, right? If there is a party that y'all are having and to get into the party, we need people to pledge to vote, like pledge to vote parties. Those are really great opportunities to get people who are interested, especially incoming freshmen. You definitely want to have people that you know are the most outgoing people in your organization to be those people. But I would encourage, I remember when I was back on campus, a lot of things that we would do is that we, in our quad or our quarry area, we would kind of like stop the traffic by doing like a chant that kind of got everyone's attention. And then as people heard the chant and they connected with it, they would make sure that they would come to our table and ask us about what's going on, right? Again, like we talked about in the slide about building relationships, you want to make sure that people have an interest or some kind of value that is connected to them, right? So my thing is don't take no for an answer, right? You want to stop until you have a reason for why you wouldn't say no, right? Like I know people are busy. You're also a student. But this also is part about being a student. How do we get engaged in the civic process? And so if you need any more ideas or strategies, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We can work one-on-one. We can work about building a plan together. We can build a backwards timeline together if you would like. But that's a couple strategies I'm thinking off top of my head. I got another question of, do you recommend online registration? So thinking about online voter registration, I would say yes, right? So get people to pledge to vote online, to people to do online voter registration, right? If you have access to computers, how can you set up computers at your event so people can do online registration? The key thing is that I want you all to think about how are you documenting that? So making sure that people are able to pledge to vote. Is there a Google form that you're using where people do the voter registration and they also are able to pledge to vote online so you can get that information so you can stay in contact with them? Because just because they register to vote doesn't mean they're going to turn out to vote, right? You want to make sure that you let them know throughout the voting period how they can get engaged in early voting. Where is their polling place? What are the things that are going to be up to vote on for the midterm election, right? You want to just not just register to vote, but also educate them, right? So right now we're in the voter registration period, but we're going to move into the voter education period, and then we're going to move into the mobilizing people to vote period. Next question: should we allow them to vote for their home state or state that they are currently in? So it's kind of a tricky question because it depends on the people that you're working with or the people that you're appealing to, right? Whereas like some people are really diehard, like, no, I'm going to vote in my state, and that's what they're doing. That's fine. And as long as they're registered to vote, you can also get them to pledge to vote. But thinking about people, right? You know, the point of this voter turnout campaign is to make sure that people who are non-regular voters, right? So we're thinking about there's a term called LPV, or low propensity voters. Those are people who don't turn out to vote, who don't vote because they either are, and when you think about college students particularly, right, the key reason why college students don't vote is because they say they are too busy. I got classes, I have work, I have to figure out how I'm going to pay for next semester. I have just so many things that are piling up on my plate, right? And so if we're trying to get people to turn out to vote, you want to think about what are ways you can make it easier for people to turn out to vote, right? And so that's why I like that question about online things, is because like if you are able to do text messages, if you're able to do social media, right? No matter what, no matter how hard I'm working every day, I'm checking Instagram at some point of the day. I'm checking Twitter at some point of the day. I'm checking my text messages at some point of the day. And so you want to think about how do you get the people who aren't registered to vote in their state, people who are not thinking about voting, to start thinking about voting and to turn out to vote when the time comes. All right, and the last question we're going to take for tonight from my brother Monte is, how do we get our members more educated on non-traditional parties such as the Green Party or Libertarian Party without seeming partisan? I love that question. Thank you so much for that question. So like I said before, right, so right now we're in the voter registration period. We're focusing on voter registration. But next we want to move into the voter education period, right? And so when you're doing voter education work, right, you can educate folks on all these different, like this is a perfect way to get people engaged in the civic engagement process. It's like, hey, what are the different parties? What if I'm not, thinking about this bipartisan system? What if I'm thinking about other types of systems, right? How do I get people educated about different parties and get them aware about all the issues, right? When we're thinking about nonpartisan work, right, we're thinking about this is an opportunity to educate people on all parts of the civic engagement process and to get them to critically think about what they are voting on, right? We're not advocating to vote for this, to vote for that, but we are challenging people to think about, one, to get the basic idea about like what does it mean to turn out to vote? What does it mean to be a young person, to be a young Black person, to be a young person of color who is voting and having an effect on the civic engagement process, but thinking about how does it work? And maybe potentially how can I be a person in the future who is going to be a leader or part of this process? And so when we move into the voter education part, we can start brainstorming some ways to do this. But I think that having events where you are educating people about what's on the ballot, as well as like what are the parties standing for, as well as the parties that aren't as publicized as, as the main parties, what their position on these things are and what they're doing, is a really great way to expose people to other non-traditional parties. So thank you for that question, Monte. So again, this is going to be the end of our webinar for tonight. Thank you, Region 7, for showing out. I really appreciate this. When I send out this presentation, feel free to share with other people. We really want to get Region 7 tapped in and engaged and motivated to turn out voters for this midterm election, because a lot of what we do in this midterm election will affect what happens in the 2020 election, right? And so see this as a practice or a pre-run for like how we do work later in the future. But if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, Real quick, I'll put up our email address real quick. It is youthcollege@naacpnet.org. Feel free to email us about questions, comments, concerns. Again, there'll be a survey that comes out at the about an hour later from this webinar that will ask you about your thoughts about the webinar, as well as things that you feel are necessary for us to talk about, we can collaborate on. And again, I want to get engaged with y'all. But thank you so much for being on this webinar, and have a good night.